Somebody invited me to it on Facebook, and I think at first I was just like, what is this? You know, another Facebook group, who cares?
My roommate's girlfriend was rocking this sick ass wooden watch one day. It was made of wood. And I said, where'd you get that? That's awesome. And she said, oh, I got it on Bunz Trading Zone. And I was like, well, what's that?
A friend of mine had posted on her Facebook wall that she was a part of this group that was really amazing and community-based and like almost had like a philanthropic tone to it. And I was like, what is this group? How do I get a part of it?
My first trade was actually a vacuum cleaner for 2 tickets to the Ripley's Aquarium.
A good friend of mine who I used to work with was moving to Australia, and she got rid of all of her furniture and everything on this really quirky Facebook group, as she described it to me.
I traded for that Jose Bautista sweater that was going around, the one where he does the bat flip and it says, Merry Flippin' Christmas.
I will trade my watermelon sweatshirt for this ridiculous mug. Thank you so much.
There was this girl who was looking for roadkill, and there was this frozen dead raccoon. And I thought, well, that's worth 10 tall cans. What I really would like more than anything is some dolphin wallpaper and a dolphin bong.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's an addiction, that Bunz. You can't stop looking at it.
A lot of people get confused by that, I think, because it's just ISO.
ISO, I honestly, at this point, I'm too afraid to ask.
ISO is in search of, so I am ISO in search of vinyl.
Emily needed to trade something. I think the story goes she needed something to eat, and so she created this group with her friends.
My name is Emily Francis, and I started Bunz Trading Zone. I was literally just hungry one day, and I didn't have enough money to buy pasta sauce. And I had so many friends who lived around me, and I knew that they could probably help me out, and I probably had something that they wanted. So I started this Facebook group and just invited a few of my friends, and made my first post. It was a group of people that all had a similar viewpoint. We all struggled somehow financially, and we all had so many things. And it was about 2 years later that it started to get really popular. And then within the past year and a half is when it really kind of exploded. We're dealing with a lot right now, and we're still a small team, so it's really awesome, but it's super overwhelming.
Next year looks like not a lot of sleep and a ton of learning.
Bunz's greatest asset is its community, and its greatest challenge is how do you scale that community and the goodwill and good feelings that community brings. That feeling becomes more in question the larger community gets. And so I feel that this is going to be the issue to which Bunz will to live and die on.
Somebody posted a mouse in the, like she's into taxidermy. Normally you just see the finished product, but this was in the process, so she had like 1 needle per toe. There were needles in its head, needles in its jaw, needles everywhere. I was the first one to, and she was treating it like it's just, like it was a picture of a fucking rose. Like it's just normal. Like, as I was the first comment, I was like, may I politely say, what in the name of fuck? And it got like 45 likes in a second because it matched everybody's thought. That was everyone's first thought as soon as they saw it. People who were into taxidermy were like, whatever. Yeah. They answered back like it was a fucking rose, but everyone else who agreed with me was like, yeah, exactly, what is this? There's always a debate, don't hobby shame me, I'm not hobby shaming, whatever, all that. I've never even heard of hobby shaming before, but...
I've never heard that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, don't hobby shame people, you're a bad person.
I gotta big up Ken for being the most enthusiastic, over-the-top Bunzer ever.
It's funny because people like compliment me and I'm like, my life is so sad. Why are you saying like I'm a VIP? I'm meeting people all over the city and having like really awesome times. And I think another big thing that people know me for is just because I make really stupid photos. All right, come on in. We're already starting with something that's going. That's a Bunz trade. It's a microwave table. Then we come to this. So this is the hell that I'm kind of in. I think it's when you don't realize that your place is a mess that it's a problem. A lot of this stuff is from friends and neighbors who have found out that I'm good at trading, and a couple things that I've picked up from neighbors' lawns. Like a bag of tools and like teapots and cutting boards and books. And I've got a huge stack of mirrors that I think will be fun, because usually when I do trades, I like to make my trades stand out. I want to live in my place and not be a hoarder. I'm like surrounded by mirrors. Like, I don't need all these mirrors. All right, so I need to just get my phone. We'll try like fashionable. I actually wore this jacket in Suicide Squad as an extra. I got it in Vietnam when I was backpacking. All of the people that were in costumes were like, that's awesome. So good. Now I need my phone. Where did I put my phone? All right, so we're all hooked up. I've got 4 broken mirrors to take to Elijah. And now comes the fun part. 4 broken mirrors for 1 wig.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Yeah, I think some people making an exchange may just make the exchange, and it's purely instrumental. For other people, there's a more authentic, a warm or interpersonal relationship that comes out of that exchange.
There's an element of transparency, like you can kind of click around, you can see if you have mutual friends, you can see, I don't know, for some reason, like that sort of validates it a little bit.
To be able to like meet somebody and check their profile and kind of get a feeling of whether or not you're going to get along with them, and then go, sure, come on over and we'll trade this thing, and then you start getting into a conversation, and then you kind of get to the point where you're like, hey, do you want to kind of exchange contacts? And it's kind of like speed dating for friendships. I can't think of another way to do that at this point in my life as an adult.
I think the main reason why Bunz succeeds in trading where Kijiji or Craigslist doesn't is because Kijiji and Craigslist are mostly known as places to sell things, and while they do have trading zones, I have to say that most of the people who populate those zones aren't necessarily people who I would say are invested or interested in building community.
I think part of it is that now we've been online, or young people have been online for a while, and they really want more of a sense of community, right? That kind of is everybody's like real, I think, thought and culture anyway, is they want a sharing culture, but they just don't know how to get there.
My girlfriend's an avid Bunz user, a lot of my friends are, and I still see like there's a huge value in seeing something in your house that doesn't have value to you, and it does have value to someone else, and there's a way to connect. And then the culture that's kind of the community that's grown around it, it's not just about the stuff anymore, it's about these relationships that are building.
It's just, as I said, it's more authentic than the kind of communication, the kind of connection you would make with someone in a big store, especially a chain store, in which a lot of the emotions generated are, we all know this, including the employees themselves, they're not authentic, they're not genuine.
I just think it's really interesting to ask the question, like, what kind of community or relationship between people does this economic model breed versus a trading or bartering economic model? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's the actual economic model itself that breeds the trust.
It's not like traditional shopping where you just go and talk to someone you don't know, browse a bunch of things that look the same, overpay, everything's crowded. It's kind of like a special meeting with you and a stranger, but you're both getting something, as much as it's a surprise, it's something useful, like 100% of the time.
All right, here it is. So I work as a butcher right now, and part of my job is to throw away a lot of meat that is still good to eat, even though the date on it is technically it's expired. Like, there's a lot of energy that goes into producing these things. Like, it's not just the ham that you're throwing away, but it's like, you know, however many gallons of water that went into the ham and like all of the resources that went into producing this ham. So I was feeling just pretty bummed out, like, that I was gonna throw all this ham away, and I thought, fuck this, I'm bringing it home and I'm gonna get rid of it on Bunz. But I didn't want to say that I brought this ham home because technically I was stealing it, even though it was just like garbage ham. I made up this like ridiculous story about like meat slamming my boss, and like Indy 88 was like, we want to talk to this guy, and then that was like my 15 minutes of fame plus another 5 here. I'll tell you the truth. Yeah, I was just getting rid of the ham. And yeah, I just gave it all away. Like, I got rid of it in like 40 minutes. Like, people just showed up in my house and took the ham away, and I was like, cool.
My name is Sarah Lee.
I'm Nadia Koja.
And we run an underground restaurant called Chez Lisgar, in which all of our guests are just complete strangers that we found through Bunz Trading Zone. And yeah, we've been doing this since February, every single Friday night.
We posted it on Bunz, just a thread saying if anyone would want to come over for dinner one night, just because we had a lot of leftovers. Instead of just trading our leftovers, it might be an interesting thing to meet people in the community. And overnight we had about 400 likes and 100 comments. Mm-hmm. So we decided to just funnel everything into like a Google form to keep track of it, and we started making reservations.
Really? It's 2 women. Their names are Lisa and Stacy, and that's all we know.
Didn't know that, so.
The post just came up on my feed, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like food, and I enjoy social experiments, and thought it would be great.
Yeah, same here. Love food, love strangers.
Yeah.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Sometimes the food doesn't even match. Like, the appetizer and the main course, it does not even go together. No, like, Sarah will like go on Tumblr. She's always on Tumblr, and she basically has a folder of food that she wants to eat.
Yeah, because I don't cook. Put kind of stuff that I've really always wanted to try, but I'm too lazy to actually, you know, do myself.
Within the first few moments of walking in the door, being greeted by lovely Sarah and Nadia and Lisa, I was just kind of like, hey, no one's a murderer. The food's gonna be good. Everything is great. Smooth sailing from there.
Just having the chance to sit down with a person who I would never speak to on any other day. So we just thought it'd be a good way to get rid of leftovers, but we didn't know that people were like genuinely interested, not just in the food, but in like our company, which is
a lot of
kind
people
of interesting.
Were mostly interested in just like coming to hang out with us.
Yeah, the food was definitely like a bonus for them, I think.
A lot of people that are in our age bracket don't have a ton of money, and, you know, we're working 3 or 4 jobs. So any amount of, you know, bartering or help you can give to each other, I think it's important.
Young people are all in debt. People can't really afford to, you know, live the lifestyles that the generation before us was able to live. So the idea of trading is really, you know, enticing, because everyone's like, oh, I don't have to use cash. This is great. I can trade stuff I already have with stuff I don't need.
So you're going from the concept that you actually don't have money to buy anything anymore, which we're in that situation right now. Population doesn't have money to buy, or most of the population. Then you go, the next step is to say, okay, how can I reuse the resources that I already have? And the easiest way is to say, okay, I don't need this box, but I need this bottle, so I'm gonna exchange that. I actually think the concept that there's no money exchange, there is money exchange, because everything that's in the system money has been used to buy that item. Just because we don't actually use cash to exchange doesn't mean that the money part is non-existent.
I think this new form of exchange is probably it's not anti-capitalist, because it still operates within a capitalist society. But I think it's probably a product of capitalism, a way in which people, and primarily young people, are coping with the many negative consequences of capitalism.
Right now, I think Bunz, along with other sharing platforms, a prominent example right now for me in the city would be the Toronto Tool Library. Toronto Kitchen Library is another example. Right now, I feel like they're getting lumped into the conversation around the sharing economy with some of the larger entities in that space, notably the Airbnbs and Ubers of the world. And that hasn't been a net benefit to platforms like Bunz.
There is the issue with the sharing economy to be exploited. So companies like, taxi companies or cleaning companies tend to exploit that idea of trading like part-time or like casual work for cash, and it turns like when it becomes monetary, that's when I think the sharing economy has gone down.
The utility of the Facebook groups is going away as they approach 40, 50,000 users. Facebook's not set up to handle that. Things get pushed out of view, depending on who you are, the algorithm comes up differently, you don't see all the same things.
As it grew, I was finding it less easy to get what I needed. And I had started to think about building an app. So we got the investor probably in like August or September. Then we were all able to quit our full-time jobs because we were all kind of working on this idea on the side after work, working super late, and we needed that money obviously to work full-time on the project.
This stuff isn't free. Like if you have 1 million people on a platform like this, there's significant server costs.
There are things that we're thinking about. We're just not 100% sure yet. And obviously, there have been people talking about it, and they have their own theories of how we're going to make money. But we haven't put out any of those theories yet, and we don't actually know 100% yet. Obviously, in order for us to exist, we do need to make money.
It would have to be something like charging for the app. Like, would you pay $12 a year or whatever, $8 a year or something? We could turn on ads. There's that kind of stuff. There's certain stuff we won't do. Like, we're not going to sell you data, like that kind of stuff.
Obviously, it's a very difficult question to answer because it's in the DNA of Bunz to not use money. So we're thinking very carefully about how to do it.
It's about growth at this point, right? Like Bunz hasn't been adopted en masse yet, right? Monetization, if we were to try and do it now, we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot anyway. You need critical mass to get...
What's sort of the magic number that you guys are trying to hit?
We're trying to hit 100,000 by the fall, and then eventually, like within the next year or so, 16 months or so, it's about 1 million users. Like, you can monetize 50,000 people, or you can try to monetize 1 million.
This is just coming from a dude who watches YouTube videos and reads a couple books once in a while, but I don't see how Bunz is ever gonna make money. I think Bunz is valuable because it's cool, it has a lot of human attention going into it, and people who are involved with Bunz, a lot of them are really involved with Bunz, and that's what gives it its value.
Bunz is in this interesting transition phase as it goes from kind of an accidental startup into a legitimate business. And they're clearly getting pressure on both sides. One is to monetize and the other is to not monetize, particularly from the community who I think fear monetizing the platform will remove or completely annihilate some of the magic that makes Bunz what it is.
I think to monetize something is to popularize it, because once you monetize it and you bring in investors and you bring in big money, you have more opportunity to spread.
I don't necessarily have a problem with Bunz being monetized. I think, as someone who is an artist and who has struggled for many years to get paid for my work, where people think that, oh, well, you're an artist, you should do it for the love of it and whatever. And it's like, well, I need to eat, and I have bills to pay, and why shouldn't I be paid for my work just like anybody else? And I think that we already use a numerous amounts of platforms where there's advertising, there's revenue made by angel investors, and we willingly use those.
To charge their membership, I think, is not going to work. I don't think that's an option.
I think it's a tough one. I think some members would see potential value in paying money for minimal amount of money for a membership, but then are you taking away from your reason for being and you sort of like your whole concept?
in its original stages, it exists as something that is counterculture. It counters the consumer market capitalist society. To monetize it makes it something very different. Makes it accessible to larger numbers of people, but it becomes a different kind of phenomenon.
How you can monetize that, there are different things, there are different ways we can use current models to bring it, whether it's subscription or transaction fee or something like that. But I'm not sure that's the best way to monetize it at this stage. But once there are people in the system, then there is ways of figuring out how to monetize it.
We're already seeing ads in Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and it's just kind of like natural progression for that to happen, I think. As opposed to charging people, I think you'd probably get more of an uproar over that as opposed to ads.
It's certainly a challenge. You have 50,000 people on your app, you'd think that could translate, all these people, somehow survive in the society, so they have money in their lives. If you could leverage that community and their skills and the talents and the values of that community, I'm sure they can come up with extraordinary things. If you're only dealing with corporations that are going to sponsor it, or advertisers, maybe you can get by to a percentage of your revenue that way. I think it would be difficult to make it.
As long as they add value, the user will be able to see, okay, for this fee, I'll get this value, which hopefully is much bigger than the fee that they spend. There are some people who will leave the system, but as long as there's value added in the Bunz, the majority will stay.
I think for them to succeed, they're going to really have to tap into their membership, their community, as a means to supporting their success. I think a lot about Wikipedia is potentially a really good model for them, where people are encouraged to contribute on a giving basis in order to allow Wikipedia to maintain its position as a source of neutral information.
I guess sometimes a mistake is we think that just because we're experimenting with this new idea, we can't experiment with a new business model idea. We have to use the tried and proven business model ideas. And that's where sometimes ideas fail, is because the new way of doing businesses or the new business itself is good, but once it becomes time to monetize, we just try to use something that's already been used before.
So I was at a bar a few weeks ago, actually. I was at a bar with a few friends. We were leaving, and we saw this little dog just dash past the entrance, and he had no collar, nothing, and he was hiding in a doorway. And we were like, what the hell? So we were like, let's go look at the dog, take care, see what's going on. He was shaking. It was the weekend. It was a day that it had just snowed. It was a random flash snowstorm that happened. So he was freezing, and one of my friends had the idea. He was like, why don't we just look on Bunz, randomly, just check out Bunz. There's the first post we saw was this girl saying, with a picture of that it was a Chihuahua, very same dog, being like, dog lost at, I think it was Queen, and it was a few blocks away. And we were like, we have the dog! So all four, it was four of us who were with the dog at the time. We just all commented being like, where's the beaver? Come get the dog. We have him. He's fine. And he was shaking and so scared. And the girl actually within 10 minutes came and picked up the dog. It was amazing. She was crying. She was so happy.
So I put a post up on Bunz in October because my son's autistic and he has some sensory issues with razors and things near his head. And he asked that we get someone to cut his hair at home so that it would be a little bit less stressful. So I made a post in October, and a really lovely girl named Amber answered it. And she's been coming to our place since then to cut his hair and to cut my hair in a little matching haircut, which he really likes because he doesn't have to go anywhere, and he really, really likes her and thinks that, she's his friend. His friend Amber is coming to cut our hair, and he really, really likes that. The first time I treated her for a morph suit, I don't know if you know what morph suits are. It was before Halloween, so it's a full body suit that covers her entire body. The second time, I think I gave her coffee. The third time I gave her an antique footstool.
So she keeps track of things that I post, and then periodically she'll go, save that for the next time that I'm cutting hair, and I'll pick it up then.
He avoided getting haircuts at all costs. Like, it was awful sometimes. And it got a little better as he's gotten older. His sensory needs have kind of changed a little bit, but it's still been something we dreaded for a long time until we met him.
About 70% of millennials are willing to take a pay cut if it means they have work with purpose. And I think you can extrapolate this point to the instance of Bunz as another example where I think a lot of people are doing this because they have a sense of purpose to be involved with this platform. And that's kind of what's pulling them and ensuring that they actually stay within the community.
So it's just that feeling that I think Bunz can also give, where you're kind of like, this is like different. This is not what's supposed to be happening.
Circumventing the system.
Circumventing it. So, and I hope more and more people keep joining, because the more people that are thinking that way and experiencing that outside of the system type of experience, the more they'll crave it, and the more institutions like this will exist.
I think for my generation, there's a gradual need to change culturally, and part of that is the whole issue of trust. Somehow I feel, and this makes very little sense, that I can trust some big multinational corporation, but I can't trust maybe someone who lives down the block who wants to exchange a pair of jeans for a dress I have.
The way we've done business so far, and the consumerism and the capitalism and all of that is changing. You can call it different things, but it all falls under the new way of economy, whatever you want to call that. We don't have to come and say, oh, this institution needs to make money from what they're doing, or maybe we all agree that we all have to bring value to the system, and that's how we live.
Bartering for what you do for a living as well, and it working out evenly, like saying, like, you know what, I make art and I really need somebody to come in and paint this room for me, and they really want my art and I really need their services, and no cash is going through the bank. That's amazing to me. That's the future.
Yeah, I mean, there's the sex toy, like the classic ones that get into the media, like the sex toys, the dildos, the diva cups, the used diva cups, that kind of stuff. And I mean, I don't care. I don't give a shit what you do. Like, do whatever you want. It's not weird to me anymore. That's the thing. It's not weird.